In some cases, the expulsion of state chairmen of the party who opposed his bid to control as chairman of the party. INEC eventually initiated all, an alternative dispute resolution mechanism to resolve the issues within the ADC. And seven, the key outcome of the ADR, which was signed by both parties, was that the ADC would immediately go into a convention to produce a new leadership. 8. This has not been done almost 2 years after, but instead of attempted to illegally transfer, he attempted to illegally transfer leadership of the party to people who were not members of the African Democratic Congress. He placed measures to remove all the state chairmen of the party for the simple reason that they did not fit the mold of chairman who represents the elite. Now 10, we have 5 court cases challenging the illegality of their action prior to INEC's recent position.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. We are still discussing current affairs in Nigeria. So a couple videos ago, I made a statement that ADC is a sinking ship. ADC is a party that is not fit for purpose. ADC cannot be the party that the opposition will use to challenge President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2027. And simply because of their internal crisis. The video, when I was talking about it, I was saying that ADC has 2 factions, which is causing the internal crisis. We had the David Mark faction, which is made up of the opposition that you all know and love, people like Peter Obi, people like Atiku, people like Kwankwaso, and we have the Nafiu Gombe faction, which is basically spearheaded by this guy. He was the former vice chairman for ADC last year, and he's feeling like he was disenfranchised, he was cheated, so to speak, and he never resigned. So he's causing trouble, and now there's a 3rd faction. Yes, you heard me right. A 3rd faction has now come again in that same ADC, and this faction is the Obinna Kachiku faction. So if you don't know who these people are, Don Obinna is a certain individual who is the Abia chairman for Abia State for ADC. Then Dumebi Kachiku is the former presidential aspirant for the ADC. He was the one that contested for the presidency under the platform of ADC in the last election, in 2023 election. And he feels, and after, let me give you a bit of a backstory. When the coalition came together and they adopted ADC, obviously, he was the incumbent as far as the presidential primary. So he naturally felt that he was entitled, or he was to have a say in this new coalition, or in this new ADC, because the ADC that he contested with in 2023 and the ADC of when the coalition came is 2 different ADCs. The power dynamics shifted, and obviously power shifted away from him, and he didn't really appreciate that. So he started making noise. He started causing trouble even since last year. And what happened was the National Working Committee, made up of David Mark, because when the coalition came, ADC relinquished the executive seats to the David Mark faction. So people like David Mark, Arag Beshola, El Rufai, people like that, they all took the leadership positions of the party. And when this Kachiku, who was the former presidential aspirant for the ADC, when he now started causing trouble, then now what they just did was they just expelled him. So since that last year, he has been making noise, he has been causing trouble, saying he was unfairly expelled, saying the David Mark faction, they are even illegal. You can't just come into a party and buy up the party, allegedly. That's what they're alleging, that members were bought off. Ralph Omosu, who was the former national chairman of the ADC, they said that he was paid off, and basically he sacked the whole executives and illegally put in the David Mark faction. So that's what Kachiku is basically alleging, and he has been making noise, he has been causing trouble. So now Don Obinna, who is his spokesperson as it were, he has now come out with a press conference and said that they are now announcing their own faction publicly, and saying this is their own faction. In fact, they are even backing INEC's decision. You will recall that last week INEC withdrew their recognition of ADC. If you go to the INEC portal, you see that all ADC executive seats, all ADC leadership, they have removed their names. They have removed names of David Mark, Peter Obi, all of them. They have removed all their names. So because INEC said that, okay, a case is still pending in court, and until the Nafiu Gombe case is resolved, they can't recognize ADC, which is part of the electoral laws that were signed last year in the Electoral Act of 2025. So that's what INEC is following, and that's the legal justification that INEC is using to say they won't recognize ADC. So this new faction now, this Obinna Kachiku faction, they are now coming out and saying, yes, in fact, they agree with INEC's decision not to recognize the David Mark or the Nafiu Gombe faction because those two factions in the first place were illegal. That the proper faction, the proper leadership is supposed to be the one made up of Kachiku and the Don Obina, as it were. So that's where we stand now. It's still everything is still in line with what I've been saying. ADC is a sinking ship. ADC, there's too many crises. It's the juice is not what the squeeze. You understand? Because with all the crises, even if they were to resolve everything today, I don't think they would have enough runway to properly get their house in order to challenge President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Because you need to remember, challenging a sitting government is not like any other competition. You have to come correct. You have to put your house in order. You have to do everything. You have to cross your T's, dot all your I's. You have to do everything possible to make sure that you are playing excellent defense or you are playing sufficient offense. That's how you beat an incumbent government. And with this opposition in ADC, I don't see that happening. Personally, I want competition. I want a competitive democracy, but realistically speaking, I really just don't see it happening because when you have an ADC that has so many internal crises, if you can't solve or sort out the issues between yourselves, then you cannot solve the issues of Nigeria. Definitely, you can't even win an election. To be honest, especially an incumbent president like President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is a political strategist. Like him or hate him, you have to agree. President Tinubu knows politics. Politics A1, governance allegedly F9. So that's basically President Tinubu. Politics, you have to come correct. You can't misfire. You can't to put it you can't just be doing anyhow. To put it plainly, you can't just be doing anyhow. And I feel the opposition should just leave the ADC. ADC has too many crises. Now, Dumebi Kachiko has come out to say that it's even him that's supposed to be the presidential aspirant under ADC because he was the presidential aspirant last time and he was illegally expelled. So he has approached the courts and he's seeking for compensation or to be reinstated, as it were. So now ADC has three different crises, three different factions. Three different factions. Or that kind of party, what can it do realistically, especially against a President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that has power of incumbency, that has the judiciary, that has the executive, that has the DSS, that has INEC in his pocket? How do you realistically counter against that? So ADC, I don't think ADC is the party. Personally, I think the coalition can do it. The individuals made up in the coalition can definitely get the job done. But the platform in which they are aspiring to do so, that's where I'm not too sure. That's where I'm very, very skeptical about their chances because it just doesn't seem very, very possible because with all the crisis that ADC is facing, realistically, people can debate from now to tomorrow about whether INEC should or should not recognize ADC. But the truth of the matter is this: there's an electoral law that was passed, Electoral Act 2025, and part of it explicitly states that INEC will not recognize any party that has internal crisis, any pending court judgment. INEC will simply not even recognize it. In years past, what used to happen is, regardless of any litigation or courtroom battles, INEC will let the party contest. INEC will let the party field a candidate. Then maybe after the candidate now wins, then the decision of the courts now comes out. Then INEC will now sort it out from there. If the candidate was nullified by the court, maybe INEC could just withdraw their certificate of return from the candidate and give it to maybe the next person or something like that. That's how INEC typically runs. They allow all parties contest regardless of internal disputes, regardless of different factions. But now INEC is saying they will not even allow any party to get to that stage that they will now contest and the result will now be dependent on court judgment. Who will be victorious or who will be crowned victorious will now be dependent on litigation. INEC is saying they will not even let it get to that point. If as a party you don't have your act together, they won't allow you to contest. Any member of that party will not be allowed to contest. And you know that INEC has a timetable. Primaries is slated for late this month to early next month, thereabout. So there's a timetable that parties need to follow. It's not like they can keep doing what they are doing, dilly dallying from now to infinity. They have to follow a timetable. And if primaries are not conducted, there's also a stipulation in the Electoral Act that if primaries are not conducted within the timetable that INEC has given, that party cannot even contest, and all members of the party will not be allowed to contest, and all members of the party even will not be allowed to leave the party after primaries, after the time frame of primaries have passed. INEC will not even allow you. You won't be allowed under the new electoral laws to just even leave the party. So any party you are staying in with following the period of before the period of the primaries, you better make sure that that party is solid, because you won't be able to even leave the party. Forget about 2027. You're not contesting in the next presidential election, governorship election, legislative election. That's what the Electoral Act says. You can debate about whether or not that's fair. Personally, I feel it's not fair, but well, that's the law, and those in power have made it so. It's now the onus is now on you to either protest the laws. I felt the protest should have come when the laws were being passed, but for some reason, I think most people didn't really pay attention. People in the opposition, they were focused on other things, so they didn't really pay attention. But be it as it may, the situation has gotten to where it has gotten. Now the opposition finds themselves in a tight corner. Well, it's tough, but the solution is still simple. Leave ADC, start plotting other party. Either you try and register a new party, but I think the time frame to do that has already passed. So the next best thing will be what there's this senator in Bayelsa State, Seriake Dixon, who is a former two-term governor of Bayelsa State. He formed a new party, or he kind of merged with a party that is sort of new, and he made a new party which is NDC. And so that's just where we at. I think let me just stop the video here. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.